G'day guys, and today we're going to be looking at an article from The Guardian, and it is titled, "To have a chance in the next elections, the Liberals must close the gender gap." This was written by Peter Lewis. There's a nice photo of him just there, and it was written today, the 25th of September 2018. So let's have a little look. There is no magic wand to fix gender disparity in the coalition, but quotas would be a good start. Straight away, pretty interesting. There is no solution, but here's the solution. So there's no magic wand, but quotas can do it anyway. So starting off, the gender gap in Australian politics is not just confined to the lack of female representation in the Labor Party, in the Liberal Party I should say. It's quite prevalent in the Labor Party. It is also looming as a broader battle line in the upcoming federal election. So essentially, people with no platform will use it as a platform. Instead of talking about, useful shit like economics, immigration, things Australians actually care about, they're just going to harangue about how there's no women in the Liberal Party. Not really politicking. In a month where Liberal Party has also been experiencing its #TheMToo moment with claims of bullying, protest resignation, and colour-coordinated signs of defiance, gender is becoming a key point of difference between the protagonists. This is what Fraser Anning warned us about with the Marxist agenda. And so we have the current Prime Minister Scott Morrison refusing to utter the Q word, that would be quotas, and we have the polling for The Guardian showing that a majority of people support quotas to increase the number of Liberal women in Parliament. I believe they do, to the best of my knowledge, they conduct polls online. So often younger people are generally more left-leaning. So, would you support or oppose the Liberal Party adopting quotas to increase the number of women in Parliament? And we show that the total support is 61%, the total opposition is 21%, and the undecided or don't know is 18%. We can see that there's a shift towards strong support over strongly opposed, 19-7, and a general increase in support rather than opposition, more than 3 times if my maths is correct. And we can see that most of the people that support this sort of thing, they're voting major parties, Labor, Liberal and Greens. So, scrolling on, the harangues at Conservatives, so Conservatives might shake their head at the idea of such interventionist social engineering, but the idea of positive action appears to be another marriage equality moment where the electorate is way ahead of their representatives. Just by the by, the marriage equality debacle in Australia was so pathetic because both parties agreed on it, but they still couldn't get anything done for ages. It was so ridiculous. So what screens out these figures is the high number of coalition voters who would like to see the Liberal Party step up rather than sit back and pretend its selection is on merit. Again, whether this is influenced by the polling method online, more left-leaning generally, unknown at this time. So they, coalition voters, look at 2 major parties and see one side of Parliament close to gender parity, which reflects Australia, and on the other side a group of middle-aged men in suits and a handful of disenchanted women looking for a way to get out of the building. Now, of course, this isn't an argument, this is just narrative stuff. It's not an argument, so it's basically just filler trash. And, it doesn't really matter if a political party reflects the ethnic makeup of a nation. Why does that matter? Who cares? There is no magic wand to fix this malaise. It has taken Labor 20 years of quotas to create a culture where talented women feel comfortable and supported in stepping up and leading. To me, that sentence is a bit of an oxymoron. If a woman is so talented, why does she need to feel comfortable and supported in stepping up and leading? Shouldn't she just be able to, outcompete everyone because she's so talented? But where it's all landed is clear for all to see. A diverse team of talented women from all walks of life. And it's not just about more women. It has also been a recipe for higher calibre of blokes, now forced to compete for fewer spots. You notice they can't talk about how the women need to be of a higher calibre to compete, because that's essentially the opposite of what Labor's affirmative action program is. You can have less skilled women getting in just because they don't have dangly bits between their legs. Of course, I need to remind you, just again, you've probably heard it a million times, with affirmative action, one group or many groups are promoted at the expense of others. Women are being placed into the groups at the expense of men. High caliber, really good blokes, good at their jobs, good politics, blah 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 blah, can't get in because they don't have vaginas. In my opinion, affirmative action programs denigrate those they seek to promote. Whilst they do get them into the positions, they don't get them in based on merit. This teaches sort of kids and anyone else that you shouldn't be judged on the content of your character or your actions or your performance or your talents. You should just be judged based on the colour of your skin, your gender, and that sort of thing. Additionally, even for the people it uplifts, how much can it uplift them if they get into position and they're not sure whether they got in based on merit or skin colour, gender, that sort of thing. Additionally, this may create resent within the group, because every time you look at a woman who's been promoted, you don't know if she's there because she's best for the job or if she's just been there because of affirmative action. In a group of 10 Labour politicians, you know that 4 people have been put in there not necessarily because they are good at the job, it's because they're a woman. This can create resentment within the community and self-doubt in also the women, because they don't know if they're actually suited for the job. Additionally, this can also put people who are not suited for jobs into jobs. Long term, in any meritocracy, groups that perform affirmative actions will lose, as they're not necessarily placing the people with the highest expertise into roles. Anyway, back to the article. Somewhere along the way, the political culture shifts, and the way issues are approached does too, and the party begins to look like a team with the ideas to take the nation forward. Does it make a difference? That's not even me, that's the article. It makes this affirmative statement. The party begins to look like a team, the idea is to take the nation forward, and then it immediately just undercuts itself. Like, I don't understand. Is it making a difference? It tries to answer its own question. At this breakdown of votes, the female vote is proving decisive in Labour's persistent lead in the polls. In fact, if it wasn't for these votes, the contest would be line ball. So here we have another table of results. If a federal election was held today, which party would you give your first preference vote to? So we can see towards the bottom of the table, in the two-party preferred vote, Labour is leaving the Liberal Nationals 53 to 47. It's a 50-50 split in male votes, but there's a higher percentage of female votes, 44 to 56, up from the 50-50 split in the 2016 election. The big gender gap in Liberals' vote could be a symptom or a cause of its current malaise. Are more men supporting the Liberal Party because it's a bunch of middle-aged blokes, or is the control of middle-aged blokes just making the party less attractive to women? Either way, the impact on gender in the electoral pendulum is real and is a huge advantage to ALP. So essentially, ALP is just playing gender politics. They're going, oh, more women this, more women that, and using it to collect votes. Are they going to do anything when they get elected? Probably not. Politicians just like to use things as election issues, and if you get voted in, then solve the problem. You can't use it as an election issue again. This is going to become interesting when we look at Australia's most famous female politician, the one and only Julia Gillard. Now, who is Julia Gillard? Julia Gillard was the 27th Prime Minister of Australia. She led from 2010 to 2013. She came from the Labor left faction of the Labor Party, which, as I've discussed in my previous video, is the democratic socialist element of the Labor Party. Now, let's turn our mind backs and think about this article quoting, I believe it was, a diverse cohort of talented women in the Labor Party due to affirmative action. So this is going to be good. This is going to be really good. You know, Julia Gillard was put in there to, represent women, and first female Prime Minister of Australia. She's going to do great. Except she's not. If she actually ran as a politician against the Labor Party nowadays, she would be ridiculed for her positions. Let's go through a couple of them. I found all these on Wikipedia. So, to start off with a bang, Julia Gillard opened 3 immigrant detention centres, one in South Australia, one in Western Australia, and one in Tasmania. Could you imagine if the Liberal Party nowadays tried to open more immigrant detention centres? There would be bloodshed. So yes, opened 3 immigrant detention centres. She also reopened, the Nauru and Manus Island facilities. Now those are the big boogeymen when it comes to Australian immigrant offshore detention facilities. Oh, close Nauru, free the refugees from Manus Island. It was Julia Gillard who reopened them. She also levied a carbon tax and importantly backtracked on an anti-poker machine bill. A big problem in Australia, especially New South Wales. A lot of money flowing through the pokies, ruining a bunch of people's lives. Speaking of ruined people's lives, that's exactly what she thinks about drugs. She rejects the decriminalisation of any drugs whatsoever. She also... oh man, this is so funny. She voted against same-sex marriage in 2011, but pulled a Hillary Clinton and backflipped in 2015, coming out and supporting it once it became... polling basically showed that it was in the ascendancy. She rejected the physiological differences between men and women in a great speech against Tony Abbott, and very importantly, when she replaced Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister, as leader of Australia, remember, she didn't actually win an election to get in, she just had a leadership spill, just like Scott Morrison's had with Malcolm Turnbull. In her first day as Prime Minister, she calls up Obama and be like, oh, don't worry, we're still going to, warmonger in Afghanistan, we're not pulling the troops out. Now, to be fair, she did pull the troops out in 2013, 3 years after she said that, but Australia was still supplying weapons and taxpayer money. It should also be noted that in 2008, she made a speech in Washington where she described the US as a civilizing global influence. The USA in the 2000s to 2010 is not a civilizing global influence. Think of all the countries they invaded, the mass displacements of people resulting in the European migrant crisis. I'm not going to call it the Syrian migrant crisis, they're not Syrians. What Gillard appears to be, in my inexperienced view, is a Republican, a US Republican LARPing as a sort of progressive leftist type. We have a pro-war stance, an anti-immigration stance, an anti-gay stance, an anti-drug stance. The only thing really separating her from US Republicans, instead of I'm a Christian, praise Jesus, it's I'm a woman, praise my vagina. Something else, hilariously, she shares in common with US Republicans is her low approval rating. Julia Gillard, this is from Newspoll, has the second lowest career approval rating of 23%. And that was from September 2011 polling. So, based on this poor performance and strangely hypocritical stances and all this jazz going on with her, we have to ask, would Julia Gillard have been able to get into positions of power and become the Prime Minister without Labor's Affirmative Action Program? Now remember, Labor's Affirmative Action Program has been going on for 2 decades, so that encompasses Julia Gillard's career. Was she placed into the positions she was placed into through merit or gender? And if this is true, and Gillard was placed into positions based on her gender, how much suffering and misery has been caused of it? What direction would Australia have taken? It will basically be, without a time machine, impossible to determine the damage done. So the ALP has been diligently releasing policies to further their advantage with women. So they're pandering to women, essentially, as it is obvious. Interesting enough, the article goes on to list a couple polls concerning gender equality. So do you agree with the following statements? Gender equality, men and women are equal. So we have total agreement 47%, total disagreement 44%. So it's a very slight agreement. More people strongly agree than strongly disagree. More men agree than women agree. Men agree 54% of the time, women agree 39% of the time. So it's clear that the propaganda machine is at work, telling women that they're unequal, and they have been for years. In politics, stories matter, says who. And in an era where there are so many disturbing stories about how far society needs to go for women to feel truly safe and equal, maybe Labour's success with quotas is one of the positive prompts. You know one way you could make women feel safe and equal? Legalise self-defense weapons. How about we don't shoot down mace and pepper spray 41 votes to 6? Hey? Would that make women feel safe and equal if you could jab a taser up someone's dick hole? It might. But quotas is something that makes women feel safe and equal. Because here's the thing the Liberals can't deny. The quotas have worked. the Australian Labor Party looks more like Australia, and this gives them an electoral advantage. Not necessarily. Well, the quotas have worked. The Labor Party does look more like Australia with a 50-50 split or whatever. But does this give them an electoral advantage when their quota system puts up women into positions they might not be suited for? Does it give them an electoral advantage when they maybe elect people such as Julia Gillard, fucking rubbish prime ministers, based on this premise? Does it? Could you imagine if there was affirmative action in sport? Like, we're going to have a basketball team, and 6 of those people in our team are going to be 7 foot tall, and the other 4 are going to be 5 foot tall women. This will give us a advantage on the court. It's ridiculous. Quota systems don't give you an electoral advantage. They might give you a temporary one because you can harangue about women, but in the long run, your party's going to suffer because you're not electing the best people for the job. And when you have one team that is a meritocracy and you get the best people for the job going up against a team that is only selecting at most 60% of people who are best for the job, guess who's going to win? The Labor Party is going to fuck itself in the long run with its affirmative action policies. Come on, Australia. Let's not fall for these stupid Marxist arguments, this class baiting, this gender baiting, this race baiting. We're better than this. Alright? And let's just ignore these cucks in the media who don't know what they're talking about. And what you need to understand is that they don't know what they're talking about. The only thing they know what they're doing is how to make money. And what they're essentially doing is capitalizing on a current moral panic. So it's being self-propagized by the media. If the media, whips up this frenzy, quotas women, and the politicians will whip it up too, quotas women, to score political brownie points, well, places like The Guardian can make a bunch of money off this. Like, people click onto The Guardian and go, oh shit, Liberals must close the gender gap. Oh my goodness, this is so terrible. And then they click through to an ad and make some money. The Guardian doesn't give a fuck about closing the gender gap. They just care about money. And the fact that people struggle to see this, like, big news corporations want to deliver the news. No. They just want to make money. So just keep that in mind every time you see some shill news site crapping out stuff like this. Thanks all for sticking around, and have a good one.